I'm David Brancaccio. You're listening to the Marketplace Morning Report. From APM, American Public Media.
Wayne Hogan of the Terrell Hogan Law Firm.
I'm Wayne Hogan. It's the #1 killer of teens. One text or call can wreck it all. Let's put an end to distracted driving.
Learn more at waynehogan.law.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect with Melissa Ross. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor of WJCT's First Coast Connect, bringing to the community innovation in transportation planning, commuter services, clean fuels, and intelligent transportation systems. More at northfloridatpo.com.
Opinions expressed on the Friday Media Roundtable are those of our panelists and do not necessarily reflect the views of WJCT News.
It's the biggest stories from the week. I'm Melissa Ross, and just ahead this hour on First Coast Connect, we discuss the week's top stories with our Friday Roundtable as the two top vote getters for Duval Sheriff head to a runoff. Duval County Public Schools get more money for teacher pay, and abortion protests cause disruption at a local clinic. All of that ahead. Then later, it's the beautiful noise of Northeast Florida. Keep listening for this month's JME DJ sessions as part of our Jacksonville Music Experience. All ahead, right after the news.
You're listening to WJCT News. Home prices may be starting to plateau across the country, but here in Jacksonville, houses continue to grow more overpriced. Economists at Florida Atlantic and Florida International Universities studied the housing markets in 100 U.S. metro areas. According to their report out today, the average home price in Jacksonville is around $375,000, half again what you'd expect based on long-term pricing trends. The study ranks the Jacksonville Metro the 23rd most overpriced housing market in the country. The Duval County School Board met Thursday to review a recently unsealed grand jury report accusing the district's former chief of police of failing to report more than 500 student crimes. Duval Schools has had its own police force since 2015. The founding chief of police, Michael Edwards, resigned after the grand jury report was issued last year. School board member Warren Jones says there's a historical context that the scathing report does not show.
There was concern with the school-to-prison pipeline. That's where it started. I'm not justifying what Michael Edwards did. I know it's his imagination, but I know the district was under a lot of pressure from a number of sources to not arrest so many of our students for misdemeanors.
School district attorneys say since the grand jury investigation, Duval has implemented a policy of filing a report anytime school police are called, even if there's no citation or arrest. The school's current chief of police is Greg Burton, the spouse of Democratic Jacksonville Sheriff's candidate Lakeisha Burton. Jacksonville's police union has previously called for moving the entire school district under the sheriff's office instead of under district leadership. It's currently in the high 70s in Jacksonville. It's going to be mostly cloudy today with a high near 89, heat index values as high as 100. Showers and thunderstorms are likely today after noon. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. I'm Raymond Troncoso. Thanks for joining us.
The two top vote getters for Duval Sheriff are heading to a runoff. Duval County Schools gets more money for teacher pay, and abortion protests cause some disruption at a local clinic. Some of the stories making headlines this week. Good Friday morning. We are live from Studio 5. I'm Melissa Ross, and this is First Coast Connect. Thanks for listening. Just ahead, all of the biggest stories of the week with our Friday Roundtable. Join us, 549-2937, to become part of the conversation. Then later, our own arts and culture editor, Matt Shaw, with his best local music picks, part of our Jacksonville Music Experience. That's later. But first, it's Friday, and here to discuss a busy week in the news, once again, we welcome regular contributor Charles Griggs. Good morning. Good morning, Melissa. Good to have you. Dan Scanlon of the Florida Times-Union.
Good morning to you.
And new to the panel, Randy DeFore, just completing a term on the Jacksonville City Council. Hey, Randy.
Hey, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. We'll be joined by our fourth panelist, Nikisha Williams, in just a few moments. Lots to talk about this week. Join us at 549-2937. You can watch the live video stream up now on Facebook and YouTube. Let's begin with our top story. It's going to be a runoff in the race to become this city's next sheriff as Republican T.K. Waters faces off against Democrat Lakeisha Burton. Meanwhile, Charlie Crist easily defeated Nikki Fried in the Democratic primary for Florida governor, but he faces an uphill climb to defeat incumbent Governor Ron DeSantis this fall. We're talking about those races and more here on the Friday Roundtable. 549-2937. Let's talk first about the sheriff's race. Randy DeFore, let's begin with you. You've decided not to seek another term in office.
Right.
And so these candidates, T.K. Waters and Lakeisha Burton, faced an intense primary contest that got accelerated because former Sheriff Mike Williams had to leave office when it was discovered he didn't live in Duval County, which was required for his office. Now they've got to turn around again and go to a runoff. And they're even going to have to run again for those offices once more in the following year. So as you look at this really heated sheriff's contest, I'm wondering, as a public official who's just now going back to the private sector, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I got a little ways to go before I'm totally in the private sector.
Yeah.
We can finish up this term. But my thoughts are this. I mean, this is where it really matters. You want to be the incumbent when you're going into the spring. So, what's interesting about this race is when you look at Lakeisha Burton, you see some very powerful, I would say, Republican donors that have broken rank to support her because of what she was able to accomplish in the Arlington area. She really, you see that under her leadership, there was significant reduction in crime. She really addressed some of the gang issues, and their thoughts is that hopefully she'll be able to replicate that in other areas of the city and make a tremendous, powerful change for the good for this community. TK obviously is the handpicked candidate by Williams, and so he, I think with him, you'll see similar to what we've kind of seen over the last decade, where you saw the transition from Rutherford to Williams, and then Williams to if TK is the successor to him. But it's a great race. I mean, I'm interested to see how it turns out myself.
549-2937. Charles Griggs, what about Councilmember DeFore's comment there that some Republican donors and supporters have broken ranks to support Lakeisha Burton? In this primary election, T.K. Waters almost cleared the 50% threshold to win the election outright. Lakeisha Burton had to split Democratic votes with a number of other candidates. Can she bring those votes into her column? And will Republican dollars continue to be split, or will Republican donors and voters coalesce behind T.K. Waters in November?
Yeah, I think that Republican dollars will continue to be split. It's interesting because, TK had an opportunity to close this thing out and wasn't able to do it. Probably somebody had to do with his close ties to former Sheriff Williams and some of the residency credibility issues that Williams had that may have sort of transformed, over to what Waters, the questions toward the end of the campaign. Mm-hmm. But for Burton, the key to her success is to, stir up the non-party affiliate opportunities there. Those voters are the ones who are deciding these races. If it wasn't for that, I believe T.K. Waters would have probably won, on Tuesday night. But those non-party,
they've split. Those voters split.
Yeah, they split. So you got to get more. Typically, they lean towards Republican side. But this time, with the split between the two, Burton has really got to get out there and show people that her election means change in the way law enforcement is handled.
Is that a winning message in Duval County? Dan Scanlon, you have been covering law enforcement in Jacksonville for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, whomever becomes the next sheriff is going to be facing so much constituent frustration about violent crime in this city, which has been a scourge in Duval for decades. Which candidate can execute a winning platform and really reassure voters? Look, my approach is really going to make this a safer city. That is top of mind for so many voters out there.
Well, TK Waters is obviously old school. He is literally the guy that was seen every time there was an officer-involved shooting. He was many times seen as the homicide sergeant prior to that. He is old school. He has stated in all of his debates, since that's the campaign I'm covering, that he thinks that the men and women of the force are solid. They make impacts. They've been doing cool things like going out and talking to gang members to try to tell them to not do this stuff. He says himself he's gone and knocked on 400 plus doors in that program. But don't forget, Lakeisha Burton came out of the door first. I broke the story that she was running for sheriff in April of last year. She hit the ground running. She got thousands and thousands of dollars of donations. And you're right, across the board, she got Republicans and Democrats and their rank and file who love her since her police athletic league leadership days, and then into the Arlington police zone, where she even got into a brand new substation, a nice place to be. I think she's got a solid leadership. The only question is, as Charlie said, can those other Democratic voters who supported Jefferson and Clark and Cummings as other Democrats in the race join up behind her? Because 48+% is what TK Waters got, and that's a pretty impressive amount of votes. And I was sitting all Tuesday night waiting for that to crack 50+1, and I think people are a little surprised it didn't, but TK told me, no, that's what my consultant said. We're going to hit this point. So he was prepared for a runoff, but is he prepared for another runoff?
Yeah, exactly. Randy DeFore, it was under 30% turnout for this off-year election. It's going to be even lower for the runoff for sheriff. Turning people out is always difficult.
It is, and I do think that that will be difficult for the Democrats. The turnout's going to be key to. I can tell you, the Republicans turn out. They do. I mean, my district in particular turns out. So. I see that it's a real fight ahead. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out.
We'll go to your calls in a moment at 549-2937. Let's talk about the governor's race. Democrat Charlie Crist easily dispatched Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried to take on incumbent Governor Ron DeSantis this fall. He does face an uphill battle, according to political experts, with the governor's big campaign war chest and strong approval ratings in the state, particularly among Republican voters, which now outnumber registered Democratic voters in Florida. Charles Griggs, Crist is going to really lean into this issue of abortion rights and some of the more divisive decisions this governor has made in his first term. We can certainly expect that. Is that a winning campaign message?
Well, we're going to see. Let's go back to 4 years ago during the Gillum campaign, where Duval County really performed well in terms for Andrew Gillum. I think that when we get to the governor's race here, Charlie Crist is going to have to pick a running mate that is going to energize his campaign, because I believe, and I think a lot of Republicans are like dancing in the streets because they really prefer Charlie Crist to run against someone who
over Nikki Fried.
Someone who's had a position and like he's been a political chameleon, right? So he's been a Republican, an independent, and a Democrat. And what better way to paint your opponent as someone who's pretty much unstable, different messages. He's been really all over the place as a candidate, and someone who they can build really, really opposition to and for a campaign. Mm-hmm. Now, I think also that when we get to the back to our local races, this may be a problem for our local candidates here, because they need that energy on a state level in order to get people like Lakeisha Burton across the line on a countywide level. And also, just one other thing about the sheriff's race, I do anticipate one of the other candidates who didn't win to endorse TK Waters. I think that's going to be a game changer when that happens. I don't know who, but someone's going to step out and say, I'm going to follow TK Waters into the future.
Let's go to your calls. 549-2937. Linda in Mandarin. Hi, Linda. Good morning.
Good morning. Just as Mr. Greggs just said, I don't doubt that as well. TK Waters has told us what he plans to do. I heard in a debate with a few times you guys could get him to talk, that he doesn't really see anything wrong just doing more of the same. He said he needed more funds. We gave Mike, the Sheriff of Williams, all the money, which is half of our budget.
It's not quite half. I don't think it's half, but go ahead.
I think it's $400 million, whatever. That's a lot for us. Anyway, don't doubt the case of misogyny. I've had someone indicate that a female African American, that they couldn't support a woman. So I think that is going to be the unspoken current, because people have ideas even in 2022 of what they think people can do. But I wish people, I'm a Ken Jefferson supporter, but I'm also a supporter he talked about change. I'm looking for change. We've been the murder capital of Florida since, John Rutherford, and nobody has a good answer. I'm not saying that she could solve everything, but at least try something different. Doing the same thing is the, definition of insanity, which we are going to get with Mr. Waters. Per his indication, he doesn't see much wrong with the way things have been run.
Okay, Linda. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, this message of change that Lakeisha Burton will campaign on, and how much will her gender be a role? There are fewer than 60 female sheriffs currently serving across this country. If Lakeisha Burton is successful, it will be historic for this city. Dan Scanlon.
Well, we've already had the history with Nat Glover as the first African-American sheriff. Now we have all 5 of those candidates were African-American. Not a major talking point other than at the JU debate where it was a question. So it's important no matter what happens, and they all have law enforcement abilities and great abilities. But don't forget, I talked to Waters after his win this week, and he said, I'll be talking about what we plan to do in the future, our transparency, the increase of our patrol size, reorganizing our zone sizes, and making sure we fill every zone with the right number of people. So intriguingly, some of that is the same old, same old. We need more cops on the street. Only 1 or 2 of the candidates have been talking about making the zones smaller and trying to get cops out of their cars and walking among the people so that your beat cop. So there is some change coming. I like the transparency comments. Obviously, as a journalist, it's tough to get stuff out of the sheriff's offices all around this region. But we shall see. It could be the same old, same old.
549-2937. Randy DeFore, what are your thoughts about a female candidate from the opposite party of yours, of course, but what it's like for women running for office, especially a law enforcement position?
I think it is an issue. I appreciate the comments of the person who called in. I do think, I just did a leadership conference for women recently, and we talked openly about the fact that women aren't very good sometimes at supporting other women. And I think we see it on both sides of the parties. Mm-hmm. So, it's disappointing, especially when you see somebody who has legitimate data to prove their leadership capability.
You mean Burton?
Correct. I mean, that someone would not vote for her simply because she was a woman. That would be disappointing.
How much do you think party tribalism will drive this race too?
Oh, I think it's a fact. I think there are a lot of people who will not break party lines.
549-2937. Mark on the west side. Hi, Mark.
Hey, I wonder if any of the sheriff's candidates have spoke of this issue about underreporting some crimes and not reporting some crimes. It just recently happened at a couple of high schools, and it'd be really easy to do out there on the street, and it has been done before. And Jacksonville has a history of that back in the day. I just wonder, had any of them addressed that I guess under a transparency issue.
Thank you for that. I really don't know the answer to that. Charles Griggs.
I don't know the answer either. That has been, some of the way that crimes are reported have been subjective. We saw that with the report that came out around DCPS Just it was difficult for the culture of law enforcement to tell that. People want to be tough on crime. I mean, that's what law enforcement tells us. They want to. That's what they say. The community wants someone who's tough on crime. But at the same time, there are some situations where you have to be subjective about how that is an opportunity is vetted.
We have a tweet referencing your earlier comment about one of the candidates endorsing Waters. A tweet from a listener. They say TK Waters will make a deal with Ken Jefferson because his sister was married to Ken before. We'll have to wait and see. But Dan Scanlon, go ahead.
Well, it's interesting. You talk about underreporting at the school district. I don't think the sheriff's office is underreporting because this morning, the latest CCR for one of our homicides is almost cracking the 500,000 mark. And those are phone calls and police reports to the sheriff's office. So we have 500,000 reports already out there in this city. There have been some concerns about how these things are reported. But remember, the state attorney's office has to have the facts to prosecute. So you're going to go with the strongest case. And maybe not every single police report has every single crime that shows up. Later can be added as the prosecution goes on.
549-2937 as we talk about the primary results in Jacksonville and around the state. Dion on the south side. Hi, Dion. Go ahead.
Hey, how you doing?
All right.
Just want to come. Great. Good morning. I just want to make a comment in reference to the ability of a female, being the sheriff here of this great city. We have evidence that it can be done, and we do have a great person by the name of Val Dimmons who's running for Senate right now, who proves that female leadership in the law enforcement capacity can work given the opportunity. Ms. Burton has definitely met the criminogenic aspect of the Arlington area in Zone 2 by decreasing crime over there. I just would hate for people to go to the polls for the simple fact that she's a female and not vote for her because she has the proof, the evidence, the empirical evidence, if you will, that she's a proven leader and that she's capable of taking on the task of being the next sheriff of this city.
Thanks for your thoughts. You had a follow-up. Well, Dan.
Don't forget that Lakeisha Burton is married to Greg Burton, who is now the head of the Duval County School Board Police, and Greg certainly has some police abilities as well. So that's a real law enforcement family. I would think there's some pretty good rank and file support for the entire couple there.
We'll see. Let me quickly go through a few other outcomes. Voters chose former state lawmaker Kimberly Daniels over Councilman Garrett Dennis in the House District 14 primary. Councilman Reggie Gaffney lost in his bid to go to Tallahassee to State Rep Tracy Davis. And in other state legislative races, first-time Republican candidate and self-described angel mom Kian Michael won a 3-candidate primary in House District 16 over more experienced candidates, Jacks Beach City Councilman Chet Stokes and former House member and Councilman Lake Ray. In Congressional District 4, former State Senator Aaron Bean won the Republican primary. And LaShonda Holloway leads Tony Hill by 207 votes in her primary for that seat. So let me ask you, Randy DeFore, about this, the impact of the governor's endorsements on some candidates in our area, in particular this first-time candidate, Kian Michael, right, who beat out Chet Stokes and Lake Ray, much better-known names.
Right. I think that if you are endorsed right now by DeSantis, then you have a good chance of winning. That's the big takeaway I believe, from the races that just happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it certainly was effective in some of the school board races as well.
April Carney
won. Yeah. Let's talk
over an incumbent.
Let's talk about that. It's 549-2937 to join the roundtable. In St. Johns County Thursday, that school board narrowly rejected a proposal to remove books from school libraries. Other districts around Florida have banned some books over the last year, thanks to a new law that makes it easier for parents to challenge or object to some materials. And as just mentioned, on Tuesday, the Duval School Board sees 2 candidates affiliated with the conservative group Moms for Liberty and endorsed by the governor, either elected or reelected, Charlotte Joyce wins another term on the board, and April Carney, who was accused of being on the ground at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th as part of the insurrection that day, she ousted incumbent Elizabeth Anderson. And at the same time, the Duval County schools got another financial boost from voters. 53% of you out there signed off on a 4-year, $1 million property tax increase for teacher pay, art, and athletics. We're talking the school results from the elections now. 549-2937. Here's a tweet from Chris. He says, more money for teachers was the right thing, but not the necessary thing to stop the exodus of teachers. Unless we address workload, unrealistic expectations, and the culture wars that accuse teachers of hateful things, the millage hike will be like bringing sand to the beach, he says. Okay, Charles Griggs, let's get your thoughts, beginning with... Let's for a minute, I'd like to just touch on St. Johns County, because we do have a lot of listeners down there, and it was a heated school board meeting. The board narrowly rejected a proposal to remove some books from school library shelves. Let's start with that.
Yeah, that is a path that philosophically we probably don't want to go down when it comes to our children in the way we've been accustomed to educating our throughout our society. The more we can, pretty much consume, the more freer we are to consume information, the better. And if you see, one of these municipalities and districts start to have success with banning books or putting in place broad laws and policies that allow people to reject literature, that's really a slippery slope. And I think that what is interesting though here locally with the school board races, the two conservative that won, is really in conflict with the tax increase that we're seeing to support teachers. So I think that when we get to the administrative part of that, how this money is, is specifically meant to support teacher pay and arts and sports, that is some of the things that are in conflict with what the two elected school board members were representing. So from a countywide perspective, we see people wanting to be more progressive. But from a district, smaller community perspective, you see people who want to, just be more, conservative about how they approach education.
I guess it's another reminder of just how big Duval County is. And district votes aren't necessarily going to be the same as county-wide votes. Dan Scanlon, what are your thoughts?
Who is the most important person in any school? It's the student. The student needs to have the freedom to explore within limits, obviously, has to have the ability to go and find a path in life. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if I didn't have a library, not in my school as much as down the street, a public library, that I could go and explore. This morning on StoryCorps, here's a teacher of 48 some odd years who was allowed to finally get into the high school level books, she said, after she'd gone through all the elementary school books and she could read Lord of the Rings. The world opened up for her, and the world can open up for any student who has access. I'm not a fan as a parent and grandparent of some of the graphic content of these books, but they are age limited. You have to talk about them when you go get them, and the parents need to be involved with what their kid is doing, whether it's in paper, on their phone, on their tablet, or on their Xbox. So let's try to get together and remember the kid is important, and then yes, the poor teacher, married to a retired teacher who spent a lot of her time and money, our money, making sure her students got the right stuff over all the years. And she's not the only one. The teachers do need the support, not just financially, but morally. They need parental support. They need the parents showing up and being a part.
549-2937, Cliff in Jacksonville. Hi, Cliff. Go ahead.
Hey, I was wondering, how is it that the people that were in the insurrection, as you were saying, how are they even able to run for office whenever the traitors to the country?
Well, just appearing at a rally is not against the law. The people that have been prosecuted and convicted, including 5 more from Florida this week alone, went inside the Capitol building and disrupted a congressional proceeding and did damage to the building and things like that. So thanks for your call, Cliff. Yeah, I mean, April Carney, who did win her race, faced accusations from her opponent that she was there on January 6th. She neither confirmed nor denied that. If she was there, there's no evidence she went inside the Capitol. In the end, voters didn't seem to care. Randy DeFore.
Well, I really think that the issue is about parental rights. I think, there is no law on the books that for book banning at the state level. I do think, as you said, that there are some things happening at a district level where adults, have a right to state that they find the content objectionable. But I think what happened, to be fair, is we went a little too extreme as it relates to parental rights. And we've gone from one extreme and maybe we've gone to the other extreme. What we really need to do is get in the middle, and hopefully we'll get there.
Do you feel that you are a centrist voice in politics in an increasingly divided, polarized era? You've been described that way.
Okay. I would say that's probably a fair statement.
Okay. And how hard is that, because to make it in politics today, if you're part of either major party, all the energy, all the money, all the stuff is going more toward the more extreme voices and positions when the majority of voters, as you say, are not on the extremes.
I agree with that statement. I think that many of us are getting, whiplashed, that from both parties. And the majority of the people are actually in the middle. So we have to stand tall. If we'd all just stand where we are, I think we would actually see change.
I think that's a prime example. We just passed 2 referendums, tax increases in this county, right, over the last couple of years. Something that we never thought would occur, because this town, Jacksonville's been, Duval County's been very conservative. But really, in honesty, this is a progressive city in ways that we don't understand. We let some of these extreme voices, get in the front of the line and try to lead on some of these things. But we have the opportunity to, think clearly and openly about the needs of the community. Teacher pay is obviously a problem from an education perspective, and so we dealt with it. Infrastructure for our schools, capital improvements was a problem, so we dealt with it. That if we would have let extreme voices from the left and from the right deal with these situations, we would never see this type of progress going forward.
Yeah, when you look at the vote to increase teacher pay, the millage rate increase, Dan Scanlon, the school district swung for the fences on that in a time of inflation. I don't think people thought that was necessarily guaranteed to pass, but in the end it did.
And it passed by 3%. It was 53%. That's a pretty close margin when you look at these things. Yes, it did pass, but there's still a chunk of people out there who did not believe it was necessary. One takeaway from all the sheriff's campaign debates has been, guess what? About $400 million of that $500 million sheriff's office budget is paycheck, personnel, and equipment, the stuff that you need. And as Ken Jefferson brought out more than once, he was a recruiter for JSO. You need to offer a good salary to get a talented police officer in the ranks. And I think they've managed to do that for the most part. So it takes money to bring talent. School district, the same thing. And you've got to be able to pay them once they get to 10 and 20 years in. And you want to keep that talent here instead of send it to Miami.
It's our Friday Media Roundtable, actually our Friday Roundtable, I should say, with today's panelists, Dan Scanlon, Charles Griggs, and Randy DeFore, and you, 549-2937. Susan in Mandarin. Hi, Susan.
Yes, I would like for people to be more careful with the words that they use. So when someone says that this race, the school board race, was about parental rights, Elizabeth Anderson said over and over again she's for parental rights. Of course we are, but we don't. But the bill 1467 and 1557, they're not about a person's rights of their child. They're trying to ban things for other people's children. And I think it's a misnomer to say parental rights if what you're meaning is one parent controlling other people's children. So I think we should be more careful with our words. If somebody voted for April Carney because they think she is going to give a parent more rights over their own child, then they were misinformed. And journalists throwing that word around, parental rights, harmed that election in my view. Thank you.
Okay, Susan, thanks for your thoughts. Before we move on, let's talk quickly about another education topic because it certainly generated a lot of discussion this week. President Joe Biden saying he will forgive student loans for millions of Americans, $10,000 for most of the households involved, up to $20,000 for Pell Grant recipients. Randy, before we spoke with someone at Jacksonville University about this on the show this week, who told us that students are elated by this news. Critics have said that they're concerned it might increase inflation. What are you hearing about this from your constituents?
Well, it's probably majority of the people that I've heard from are not happy about it. They feel that the taxpayers are paying for the sins of the academic institutions. And, I have to agree with that. I was a single parent and had to work very, very hard to put my 3 children through college. So there's a concern that it sends the wrong message, that if you take an obligation, you don't pay for it. I'm not sure I'd want that for my children to learn that lesson. So I don't know. I mean, I think I understand the issue that we've got many people that can't afford housing and so forth because they are encumbered with debt, but I'm not sure this is the right answer.
Charles Griggs.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where, there are enough people who are against it on both sides, right, to give you pause to think about how this should have been done or could be done a little better. But it's a campaign promise from Joe Biden, and he's trying to deliver on it. The challenge is that how do you fix the system? And the system is the part that's broken. And so,
is this a Band-Aid on a really horrible problem of spiraling college costs?
Many people believe this is a crisis, much like the housing crisis back in 2008, 2009. We bailed out banks. We always seem to bail out every other institution when it comes time when it gets, the line gets drawn too high, too far. And
PPP loans have come up in the discussion too. People whose PPP loans were forgiven,
right?
So,
and we don't have a situation where we're not going to be put in a position where something has to give. And this is just another one of those pieces where some constituents get a chance to catch up a little bit.
Dan Scanlon.
Good news here is that there's thousands of adults who now don't have a crushing loan over them and can actually get on with their lives, hopefully. The bad news is that money is not going to the financial institutions, which may have been banking on that. So either they're going to have to charge higher rates for other things, or maybe that wing doesn't get built because they don't have that extra amount of money. So it's a good news, bad news situation. Maybe the good news is that it's a nicer life for thousands of alumni who now don't have to worry about $10,000, $20,000 that they have to pay.
Some folks called into the show yesterday, doctors and lawyers, who told us their loan debts are in the 6 figures. So it's just incredible how much debt some people accrue. Brad at the Beaches. Go ahead, Brad.
Melissa, it just seems there's so many other ways we could have mitigated this. The idea that the United States of America charges its citizens interest on their education. We could have left the loans where they were and allowed the interest rates to go to zero so that they weren't crushing. It is tough for people that struggle to pay for their education and then to see others get forgiven. It's really a dividing issue. The schools that take this money, again, as I understand it, the cost of education in the last 20 years has gone up 1,200%. If a person under 21 can't buy a gun, can't buy alcohol, and can't buy cigarettes, how are they allowed to finance $250,000 worth of debt or 6 figures worth of debt? There's just so many sides to this story that that could have affected the decision in a different way. Why America is making interest rates off the education of the people is beyond me. Set the rates to zero. Make the schools responsible. Make the schools give the loans to the students. If they don't pay it back, then the school that taught them that received that money is affected and not all of us. Just a bunch of different ways to look at it.
Thank you for that. I do believe the announcement from the Biden White House does get at the interest rate issue to prevent ballooning interest payments. It'll be challenged in court, though, of course. Daryl in St. Augustine. Hi, Daryl.
Good morning. And the last fellow's points were excellent. I just don't think that it's really fair to put on the students. Every parent, every counselor, and every teacher have been telling our children for 30 years to go to college, go to college, go to college. They've increased the rates, and so that now here, 17-year-olds sign this loan. And, you know, no 17-year-old knows what they're really getting into, but they're listening to the parents that are telling them to do this. And then once they get the 4-year degree, they actually can't get a job making 70 or living wage. So it's pretty unfair to dump this blame on the kids when it was the parents who told them to do this.
Thanks.
I mean, this is our fault, not theirs.
Thanks, Daryl.
One other point. My daughter is dating a professor's son, and his wage has remained pretty consistent over the last 20 years. Just exactly who is getting this money from a 1,200% increase, because I can tell you it is not the teachers. They are building wings, they are building dorms, they're doing everything but actually paying the professors who do the teaching.
Thanks for that, Daryl. One more on this, and then we'll move on. It's Lisa in Riverside. Hi, Lisa.
Hello. I also agree with the idea of helping the student loan debt out. And your previous caller was so right. I've worked in the system, I've been in the system, and I have student loan debt. And it's completely true that the pay hasn't gone up. The wings and the buildings keep getting bigger. The pay and the salaries of the presidents of these universities keep getting bigger. But the salaries of the professors, many of them who still do have a lot of student debt, and especially if there's someone like me who did not come from a family of privilege and had to be the first in my family to go to college, of course I didn't know about loans I was signing. And I was young and was completely naive. So I couldn't agree more. And for those out there who are sour about it, I can't help but think of the analogy of whether it's before the COVID vaccine was invented or before any type of illness that has found some kind of wonderful cure. We don't seem to be mad at people because maybe they have a parent who died from COVID, and then after that happened, the vaccine was invented and many other people were saved. So it just seems strange to me that a group of people suffering and some of that suffering being alleviated would somehow make people angry because they had to suffer some. You'd think that they would want less suffering. That's all.
All right. Thanks for everyone's thoughts. And gosh, that is people have strong opinions about this. So I'm glad we touched on it. Now, also making headlines this week, a woman's choice of Jacksonville continues to object to how police handled a large abortion protest this week outside the clinic's doors. The clinic and police are giving conflicting accounts of what happened. Kelly Flynn, the CEO there, said nearly 200 protesters surprised clinic staff Monday morning with a large protest. She told this program the protesters were backing up traffic and blocking entrances. She plans to file a complaint with the FBI. Here's Flynn.
Even the staff and the physicians, along with the patients, had a really difficult time trying to get into the parking lot. They were blocking the entrance into university. There was even another fire truck that was blocking the entrance off of Bennett. So this was a direct violation, as you mentioned, of the FACE Act, as we see it. Although there was JSO present, there wasn't a whole lot of movement in terms of directing traffic, as they mentioned, as one of our physicians that was arriving that morning had to lay on the horn for a good period of time before anyone recognized it so he could get into the park. When you block entryway, so all of that is private property aside from the easement, which is meant for ingress, egress, pass and repass, not to stop. and there were so many people. Cars were blocked. Cars were backed up. Could not gain entrance into the parking lot. And so, in terms of JSO escorting anyone, we didn't see any of that. There were eight cars or 8 officers that were outside, and they were gathered around. And even when, like I said, when our doctor pulled up, he had to lay on the horn to finally get someone's attention to help him get into the office. And how the officers knew of this event and we were never told about it is still in question to us.
Okay, a Woman's Choice says they want the FBI to investigate what they call a violation of the FACE Act. That is the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, a 1994 law that makes it a federal crime to obstruct entrance to a clinic or use force. A JSO spokesman described the situation very differently in an email Wednesday to WJCT News. Assistant Chief Craig Waldrop says he was at the site for hours with 8 officers and other supervisors, and that they worked to keep the situation under control. Dan Scanlon, we can expect more of this because as many states across the Southeast ban or severely limit access to abortion, Florida is what is known as a receiving state. As long as abortion remains legal here, it is legal up to 15 weeks. A Woman's Choice says they're getting clients coming in from other states to obtain access to the procedure here in Jacksonville.
Correct. These clinics have for years had protests out front, and there have been instances in clinics in Florida where those protests, which are supposed to be quiet and fairly peaceful, have turned violent, and there's even been worse issues than that. So I do expect that there will be more, because we will be getting more people from other states who have the bans in place, bans, in fact, from zero. But don't forget, our governor could, in fact, and is hinting that he will also institute a total ban on these. So we may not, unfortunately or fortunately, have this problem again. But again, these are normally quiet people with signs standing. They may block, but they usually move away. I have Craig Waldrop's statement here that you guys got. I have to think that they did something. Maybe it got out of hand. Maybe there was just way too much traffic. It could have been during rush hour. There could be any number of extenuating circumstances why there was just a lot of traffic. And that is an area with a hospital and many doctors' offices. It just may not be the right place to try to hold a protest or the right place to try to handle traffic control.
With all of that said, it's now time to go around the horn and round up stories that might have missed your attention this week, but they caught our eye. Yes, it's our lightning round, folks. And I'll start. This isn't something you've missed, but something that's coming up. Make sure to listen to the Florida Roundup today at noon. It's a closer look at election results across the state. We asked both Governor Ron DeSantis and his Democratic challenger, Charlie Crist, to appear. Crist said yes. We will have him on the show today at noon. Charles Griggs, what's on your mind?
All right. The City of Jacksonville's Public Nuisance Abatement Board declared downtown East Apartments, which we know as Franklin Arms Apartment, as a public nuisance. They've asked the owner of the facility to address a long list of issues, giving them 30 days. Some of it is simple as fencing around the complex, but they also asked them to beef up security because there have been a lot of crimes over there.
Randy DeFore.
Big issue this week that just actually happened yesterday is there's some pushback from city council members on the contribution that has been requested by the mayor to the chamber of $750,000. That was a tremendous, if you look over historically over the last several years, it went up from $200,000 to $400,000 to this year $750,000, and I suspect there'll be some great debate in the future on that issue.
Thanks for that. And Dan Scanlon.
Controversial ex-public defender Matt Shirk finally getting a year's suspension issued by the Florida Bar after the Florida Supreme Court approved the issues that Shirk had that the Times-Union broke the story on, including having the bar and the shower in his office and hiring some young ladies to work for him that led to his divorce. And also, I can't wait for the Charlie Crist, Ron DeSantis debate. That'll be a wonderful.
That will be one to watch. And let me also tip you to another show we have this weekend on 89.9. What's Health Got to Do with It? Hosted by Dr. Joe Servin of the Mayo Clinic. This week, they're looking at concussions. So make sure to listen to that. And I want to thank all three of you so much for being with us. Dan Scanlon of the Florida Times-Union, regular contributor Charles Griggs, and Randy DeFore, the latest soon-to-be ex-city council person, to join us on our Friday show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to have you all. Up next, it's the beautiful noise of Northeast Florida, our monthly DJ sessions where we take you inside the Jacksonville music experience. We're the only radio station playing local artists mixed in with national artists on the radio, and we're going to listen to some local talent next. Don't go away. You're listening to First Coast Connect on 89.9. We'll be right back.
This week on Science Friday, we'll talk about a potential new test for Lyme disease and how it might improve diagnosis and treatment for that tick-borne illness. Plus, the creativity behind the scientific method.
The cumulative knowledge we have in the world right now is all based on individual people's personal curiosities.
That's on Science Friday from WNYC Studios.
This afternoon at 3 here on WJCT News 89.9.
Republicans are calling it a government giveaway, but fans of the president's student loan forgiveness plan say,
bring it on. Bring it on.
In Florida, voters pick a former governor to take on the current one. Uvalde's police chief is fired, and the tracks of a 15-foot dinosaur are revealed in Texas. More on the Friday News Roundup, next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Time to take in the beautiful noise of Northeast Florida. It's this month's DJ listening sessions inside JME, the Jacksonville Music Experience. Arts and culture editor Matt Shaw is here with his best local music picks, which you can hear on the radio. Hey, good morning.
Hi, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
Good to talk to you. So what are you liking this month?
So 3 new tracks this week, 2 from artists we've heard from before and 1 from a group that we may not hear from again. More on that in a moment. But I want to start with a new song by Ebonique, R&B singer-songwriter. We've covered her 2022 release, Edge Control. And the title track from that record's been in rotation on the independent 89.9 HD4. The new song is called Cascade. Simplifies the production from her past releases. There's some seductive, familiar chords in there and some spare percussion with Ebonique's top-notch voice leading the way. Let's hear a sample from Cascade by Ebonique.
There you go thinking I need you. Like I can't find somebody better. Then again, I don't wanna be with nobody that don't consider me or somebody. 'Cause no one knows me and my body quite like you do. And it's true that I don't
I every time you play this stuff, I can't believe how talented all the local art and music is. I mean, these
Totally.
musicians are amazing right here in our area.
And it's very contemporary sound, as you heard on that one. It's got that kind of modern bedroom pop feel, similar to artists who others might be familiar with, like Vagabond, something like that. But yeah, you're right. It's even for me, I feel like I have my ear to the ground, and I'm constantly being surprised and introduced to new music.
And it's great that we're able to showcase local artists on the Independent every hour on the hour.
Yeah, it's really novel and, really important that we give a platform to local artists here. So we're happy to do it.
This is our 89.9 HD4 channel. Okay, what else are you liking this month?
Yeah, next I want to talk about Howdy, Jax Beach-based singer-songwriter who spent some time in Nashville before coming to Jacksonville. He's truly a saltwater cowboy. He's released 4 singles so far, amassed more than 500,000 plays on Spotify, which is a modern marker of success in today's day and age. But Hard Feelings is a new song. It's a slow burn of a ballad, spare and intimately lo-fi number, channeling a little bit of like 70s Jimmy Buffett, and then the kind of the whispery early 2000s basement recordings of artists like Iron and Wine. So let's hear a bit of Hard Feelings by Howdy.
I wanna hold it all against you, but it feels so old. I wanna hold it all against you, but it feels so old. There's just no limit on forgiveness, and I can't take the distance anymore.
That's nice. And that you're right, that has that Gulf and Western sound.
Gulf and Western, I love that term.
Yeah. So great. You do hear the influence of Buffett and others in that track. That's Hard Feelings by Howdy. Okay, tell us about the Wjct.
Yeah, last but not least, it's a collaboration featuring Wjct residents, multi-instrumentalists and producers Glenn Michael Van Dyke and Lena Simon. Full disclosure, I play in a band with these two folks. Okay. But this particular group features international artist, Swiss musician Robin Arthur Girard and Argentinian musician Manu Duca. The group recorded an album of 10 songs here in Jacksonville when the others were in town. It's called I've Found God in a Madonna, and it's dedicated to the great pop artist Madonna. Given the makeup of the band...
Only the Beatles and Elvis have sold more records.
Wow, I didn't know that.
She is the top-selling female artist of all time.
The queen. Yeah. Given the makeup of the band, though, it's unclear how or when they might get together again, but we're happy that they did. So let's listen to one song from the album. It's called The Seven. This is The Wjct.
When it purrs, you know it follows you. It's spinning hidden chains and calls you to follow. When it calls, you'll never know. When it comes, you'll never see gold unless you want it to. Unless you want it to.
Also fantastic. Matt, you just never miss with your picks. So listen to all of this local talent on 89.9 HD4, The Independent. Now, not only do we have all of this great music on our Jacksonville Music Experience platform, we have live performances on our WJCT JME soundstage too.
It's true, yeah, and we're thrilled to be starting to book some shows coming out of the pandemic, but we've got this wonderful soundstage. It's a great room to see a show, and we're thrilled to bring in Wjct, which in the 1970s, this band was as big as the Beatles in their home country of Zambia.
Wow.
Relatively unknown in the States until Now Again Records released their full catalog in 2010. Since then, there's been this renewed interest in what's called Zamrock, which is a catch-all term for groups from that period who were blending psychedelic rock with African rhythms. This is the first North American tour that the band's ever done, and we're just thrilled that they're stopping in Jacksonville on their way to a Levitation Festival in Austin, Texas.
A Levitation Festival? What's a Levitation Festival?
It's a lot of psychedelic rock, and
cool.
It's a pretty popular festival, and this band, I mean, this is like, to me, this is kind of a huge thing for Jacksonville to get this band to come through.
Wow.
So we're really excited to bring them here.
Well, check it all out at jacksmusic.org. Arts and culture editor Matt Shaw, always spinning up the greatest music right here on this show, too. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks for listening with me.
And make sure to join us again today at noon for the Florida Roundup, our live statewide call-in program rounding up the biggest stories across Florida this week. We will speak with Congressman Charlie Crist about his campaign to try to unseat incumbent Governor Ron DeSantis. That and more today at noon on the Florida Roundup. Have a great Friday.
There's just no limit on forgiveness, and I can't take the distance anymore. I want to hold it all against you, but it feels so wrong. When I'm cold, honey, I'm freezing. Think I'll take you down south.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
North Florida TPO, proud sponsor.